Communications doesn't seem like something that you should plan, but you know what? If you have 20 people on your team, you better plan it. And you have a lot of stakeholders. We'll talk about that in a little bit. You might have more stakeholders than you think. Oh, and then one other thing is that jigsaw puzzle has to come back together again when you're done. You can divide it up, figure it all out. You can decide you're going to do everything, but then you're going to find out you don't have the time and you don't have the budget. Okay, so scope is one of the hardest things to figure out. Like schedule and budget, you can learn numbers and dates and you can kind of crunch them together. They're not so bad. But scope is figuring out what it is that you're going to do. So you start off with what are the deliverables. And the nice thing about future cities is they're well defined. You have a virtual city design, that's worth 48 points. You have the city essay, that's 60 points. The city model, 70 points. City presentation, 70. Your project plan, 10 points. I think that should be a little bit higher, by the way. You want to get input in the stakeholders. Anybody want to take a guess at who stakeholders are on your project? Anybody? Okay, how about other team members? Obviously, right? They're stakeholders. Stakeholders is anybody impacted by or who can influence your project. Think about it, anybody that can help your project. Anybody want to, there's up there?
Our engineer.
An engineer, the mentor?
Mentor, yes.
Yeah, mentors are definitely, they're very important stakeholders on your projects.
You're helping us.
I am, you're right, I didn't even think of that. Thank you very much. How about your regional coordinators? Do you work with your regional coordinators? They are, maybe you don't know them. Some of the how about your teachers? Don't forget your teachers. They're like the sponsor on the project, by the way. In the project management world, we have sponsors. They're the people that are really, I'm all for this project. And I bet you in most cases, that's the teacher. Sometimes it might be a parent that came across it, but the teacher is the one that's going to go make sure you get all the support from the school. But you go around to all your stakeholders and you collect requirements. When you're doing your plan, you're not going to have all the answers. You're going to have to make some assumptions. So maybe some assumptions here are natural disasters are the only problem for our grid. I don't know that that's true. I only read the handbook a little bit. I'm not sure if it's true. That's an assumption I would have to make. It includes power generation and transmission. I think from the previous speaker, that sounds about right, but I still don't know it's true. I gotta read the handbook probably. And sustainable power sources are included. So we want to really look at the turbines and the solar power and the fuel cells and things like that. When you take those assumptions that you're using when you're starting off your plan, you stick those into the assumptions section of the project plan that's in the handbook. That's not that hard. So now we got 2 sections done. So you're on your way. Then you have functional requirements, and this is really what's in the handbook. It uses the word specifications. Those are similar terms. I think the word requirements. Again, it's going to be what does your project do? And when you work with engineers, they want to go into how almost immediately. When you're doing requirements, you're just trying to get agreement in what we're going to do. So we have resilient power for a city. It's got to be able to survive natural disasters, quick recovery from problems, and then other types of disasters. I have it as a question mark because I think it's an assumption. I don't know. I thought just natural disasters, but I'm not sure. I have to answer that question. Does anybody have that answer? Is it just natural disasters or other types of disasters? You have to make an assumption that it is just natural disasters. We'll figure it out later, maybe. So what are some of the constraints that you have on how the work must be done? Well, you have to work after school, or maybe some people are doing it in class, but there's probably a time constraint on when you can work. Maybe meetings must be at the school with a mentor and a teacher. Maybe you can work at home. Drafts, prototypes must be reviewed by a certain date. You got delivery dates at the end. You have a competition, that's a firm delivery date. And you probably, when you're planning, want to bring up some other milestones and delivery dates. Make sure you put your constraints and your assumptions into that project plan. Does anybody want to take a guess at some requirements for their projects? Did I make it clear what a requirement is?
You have to use recycled material for your model.
That is a requirement, isn't it? That's definitely a requirement. Very good.
The model has to be a certain size.
That sounds like a requirement to me.
Yes, it
I can, a little bit louder.
The essay can only be up to 1,500 words.
So the essay can only be up to 1,500 words. These are requirements, very good.
Your budget can exceed $100.
Sorry.
Your budget for abiding with your rules.
That's definitely,
Not,
that's somewhere between that's probably a constraint. Because you would like to spend more, right? But so that more might be more like a constraint, but that's a good one.
That your city should be eco-friendly.
It should be eco-friendly. So now how do you measure eco-friendly though? And just, I'm going to go down a little bit of detail. For requirements, it's usually measurable. So we're going to have 3 of these things. We're going to have 3 generators. 1,500 words is very good. You have to measure it. Because when you deliver this, when you complete your deliverables, you're going to compare them and to this specification. So you can say, okay, eco-friendly. So you want to develop that requirement a little bit further. So that was very good, but that one, eco-friendly, it's going to use wind turbines for power generation. That might be how you do that requirement. Is there any questions on requirements? So, this is a complicated drawing, but it's how you organize everything. Ideally, it would be how you organize your requirements. And we're probably going to, this presentation is going to be available, so you don't have to worry about getting copies of it. It'll be made available after we're done. And I'll show you where you can get it. So you have your project, it's a resilient city, and there's your 5 deliverables: virtual city design, the essay, the model, the presentation, the project plan. And then we have blocks down below them. So this is called decomposition, but you could just say it's dividing up the work into something that's more manageable. And then what you want to do is take those requirements and divide them up also. So you define the high level work to be done. So this is a good way to organize your work. Is there any questions on that? This is called a work breakdown structure. So that's a project management term, but it is a way to organize your work. By the way, some of the other requirements that I wrote down from the handbook, and I think you guys mentioned some of them, are virtual city must use the slideshow template, you must choose a region, you must show progress at 2 points in time. I like that when it has a number in it too, I can measure that, right? And it makes it easy for the people that are doing the work also. No sandbox mode, offline preferable, turn off random disasters, no cheat codes, and do it in PDF format. So those are all requirements. And you guys threw out a lot of good examples there. So this allows everybody to focus on their part of the project. If you have 20 people on your team and you have some people working on a city model, you can say, guys, all you have to worry about is these things right here. And here's all the requirements. That's the benefit of doing the plan. You can hand somebody the scope, schedule, budget, and quality, and now they know what they need to do. Okay, so once you do scope, you can start doing schedule. And that WBS is the work breakdown structure, is how we organize our schedule. So in your schedule, you might want to have 5 deliverables as the starting point, and then underneath them, each activity. And what you want to try to do is define detailed activities for each of the deliverable and put them in a sequence. You want to estimate calendar time for here, probably in hours for each activity, and then you want to create a whole schedule for your project. When you're doing a schedule, that's when you start thinking about some dependencies, all right? So if you have an essay, it should be consistent with the design, but you want to start both of them at the same time. So maybe what you want to do is start them both at the same time, but eventually have your design demonstrated and then your essay verified against that, and then update your essay so it's consistent with your design. That's what you call sequencing when you do things like that, but you want to develop a schedule. And here's what your schedule can look like. And you can get really, really complicated. There's a lot of software out there. Microsoft Project, you can get really complicated schedules. Primavera P6 is another one. But maybe for you, and this goes in your project plan, by the way, so this is the 3rd part. So you're pretty far along your way to getting 10 points right off the bat. But here's your activities for doing the city essay research. That's that WBS element, that's a technical term. I don't want to lose everybody, but that's the way you call that little block there. So if you're in activities, read the rubric. That's a good way to go to the handbook for your specifications and the requirements. There's that word brainstorm again. You're going to get the team together and you're going to show respect for each other and no idea is a bad idea. And you're going to try to build on each other's idea. Usually when you're brainstorming, it's the ones that are off the wall that actually gets people thinking. That's why you didn't say, that's a bad idea. We've been involved in that at work. A lot of times people still do. They go, that's stupid. And we have a real nice conference room that's like a bank conference room. And somebody said, well, what would Google do? And everybody went, Google, who cares? We're a railroad. But that idea kept coming back. Everybody kept saying, what would Google do? And how can we make this look like a bank conference? I mean, we have to do historic preservation, that's a requirement. But we kept building upon that idea, what would Google do? How could we make this more modern, but also historical, preserve the historic parts of it? So brainstorming, and then create an outline. So this is your schedule. So keep it simple. You want to show a schedule for everything, all the 5 deliverables. That'll be a good way to show the schedule in your project plan that you submit. Costs. We're not going to spend a lot of time here, but you want to plan costs. Now that you have your schedule, you know what you're going to do. You can figure out how much it's going to cost. It's easy for you guys. You have labor, you have volunteers, you have students working on their own time. You have supplies. Maybe the school's going to give you some supplies, but you have that $100 limit. That's going to be a problem. You got to manage that very, very closely. And that includes, I think you guys get some parts. So you got to free parts that you got to include the value of that. In the project management world, we consider things like overhead, like the administrative costs and paying for the office. Add the estimates to determine the total cost of your whole project. See, what you usually do is that WBS thing that we had before, and you have the deliverables, you roll it up by that, and then you have your total project cost. What you do is you monitor cost and schedule for each of those WBSs, and you can figure out where the problems are starting to occur. And keep it simple. You can do a lot with Excel anymore, but isn't it nice to be able to give this to everybody? Good communication tool. So this will be a good schedule for each of the deliverables. And then you have your labor hours that you got from your schedule, by the way, and your labor costs, and your supply costs. You got $98 for your SimCity model, and nothing for everybody else. So we're moving through the plan. We're down to quality now. We're getting pretty far into the plan. So quality is a couple things. One of it is how you're going to do the work. So it's about process improvement. If anybody ever heard of Black Belt and Six Sigma, this is where that comes into place. You might want to think about your processes for how you're going to do things, but I'm not going to hit on that too much. You do want to verify the quality of your workmanship and define that in advance. How are you going to do that? Well, first of all, everybody can check their own work. All right, if you're writing an essay, no spelling errors, that's pretty easy to do. But then also tell everybody we're going to have an independent checking on this. Maybe another student checks it, maybe the mentor checks it, and then do different types of quality checks also. So one thing that you want to do is make sure you have consistency in your model, and you have people building different parts of your model. So for that consistency, you want to think of a style guide or something. So maybe making roads and how to make buildings. These are all things that you want to think about ahead of time. And it is nice if everybody knows, hey, somebody's going to be checking my work. It's not that I get it done, I go, hey, this is great. I do need to have somebody check it, and it needs to meet requirements, especially, okay? So quality means no spelling, language errors, SimCity model works. The presentation is 7 minutes and create defects. The workmanship of the model. And then how you're going to ensure it, independent document reviews, SimCity model testing, review the documents, products for consistency. Have the mentor check all the deliverables before the competition. That would be a really good quality check also. Okay, so risks are uncertain future events that can affect your project. There's 2 types of them. There's negatives. Everybody thinks of negatives. What could go wrong with my project? What's going to make me not finish all my scope, or maybe be over budget or late? And we can't be late. We've got to meet that regional competition. But there could be some good things that happen. So what you do for risk is first you identify it. And guess what method you use to identify risks? About brainstorming. All right, and then you're going to assess them, and then you're going to have a plan for response. So let's do some brainstorming right now. What are some of the things that can go wrong for your project?
Maybe you can't buy enough materials because they exceed $100.
You can't buy the material for under $100. That sounds like a pretty big risk to me. What are you going to do about that? All right? So we're just identifying right now. We're not doing anything with them. We're just going to identify them. Anybody else?
Something could break.
What?
Something could break.
Something to break, yeah, at any given time. Probably you want to break that down or decompose that into the moving part to break, right? That'd be catastrophic with a model to break.
That you're spending so much time on the details of the little things that your project may not be ready in time.
Yeah, very good. That's a good one. And what's a good way to, we'll talk about how to fix that in a little bit. But I could think of the requirements is a good way to fix that. You have your hand raised?
I was gonna say it's
Okay. Anybody else?
One year we had a foot of snowfall the night before the competition.
What are you going to do about that, right? If the competition gets canceled, weather is something too that you need to think about. All those things are good risks. So talk to others, make a list, brainstorm. You want to assess them. You want to assign probability and impact. Probability is the likelihood that it's going to occur. So snowing before the competition, it's in January, right? It could be a real problem. We need a plan for that, all right? And then not getting your work done, what's the probability of that? It depends on how comfortable you're with your plan, for one thing. Did you define what you were going to do and match it up with your resources? I really like that risk. That was a good one because it helps sell the planning part of it a lot better. So probability and impact on your project, and then you have a plan. So there's two parts to that plan. Risk happens, what are we going to do? And then the other part is how are we going to prevent the risk from happening? So here's a risk, your moving part, the batteries could die. So what can you figure out a good response for batteries dying on your moving part? Have extra batteries, right. So your moving parts at the demonstration and the batteries die and you go in and you swap the batteries out, very good. But maybe there's something you can do before that to prevent it from happening. Any ideas?
Switch the batteries when they're low.
Switch the batteries when they're low. If you can measure them, that's a good.
Put the batteries in, put new batteries in before the competition starts.
There you go. Put them in before the starts. Then you prevented that from happening. Now you only have to worry about the competition being too long, maybe. So there, you guys are experts on the risk already. You just figured that all out. So you're ready to go. And a very simple output, again, you can do a lot with risk, but you just want to list them. And then you figure out your priority based on your probability and impact. We have the judges don't like the deliverables. There's a low chance of that happening. Because we've been doing this, we're a team that's been doing this for a while. We know what the judges expect. But if you're a first-year team, maybe that's a different probability. You're really nervous because you don't know what the judges are like. What are you going to do about that? And the impact, that'll be high. This is what you're trying to do. This is where your score is going to be. So maybe your action plan will be to discuss the approach with other team members. Or your mentor. If your mentor is new, maybe you ask your mentor, hey, who can we talk to? Can we talk to another school? And they can help us out with this. Be proactive, stop problems before they happen. So proactive is putting the batteries in before the competition. That's pretty good. So purchasing is something that we plan and work a lot. We have our requirements that maybe we can't do in-house because we don't have the laborers, so we contract out a lot of those things. You don't have that. You have volunteers that are coming in. If you were paying them, that would be the same thing. But you do have some things to worry about. You have to figure out how you're going to get your model material, and you have to especially watch that risk of going over $100. We didn't figure out how we're going to handle that risk, by the way. But you're definitely going to need computers and software, and you're going to need experts to help you with that software, probably. So how are you going to get those things? You can go to stores, you can go online, you can ask around your school. Maybe they have the computers for you to use. A lot of people have computers nowadays. Or look for volunteers that are familiar with all that. So these are the things. How are you going to acquire all your material and your equipment? You want to plan that in advance. All right, now we're getting to people. And that's the hard part. And so how do you plan for people? Well, first of all, who's on your team? You have to acquire them. You have to assign your project team members to roles. Assign your project team members to activities. So you have that schedule. You might have leaders. You might have bosses. You have a lot of workers. Train your project team. Is anybody doing any training as part of this project? with some kind of training that you might be interested in. I've never used it, but SimCity, is it easy to use or is it complicated? It's easy?
Well,
Until it breaks. Then it's not, right? What's that?
Installing it.
You're installing, it's a problem. I've run into that before. Train your project team anyway. That might be something to look at, this is SimCity part, and find people that can help you with it. Determine how you'll motivate and reward your team. You're not paying them, so they're volunteers. There's something called opportunity costs. Even the students on this, you could be out doing something else, hanging out with your friends, playing sports, going to the movies, doing whatever else you like to do. You're committing your time to this. And then you get frustrated. That's conflict. You could have conflict with other team members. There could be negative stuff going on. That happens on the resource side, the people side a lot. That's actually part of life that even when you're in a career, you're still going to have, hey, I like to do it this way, and they like to do it that way, or I wanted to do that job, and so did that other person. You have to work it out. You have to figure that out. You're planning all this in advance. What you might want to do for your team is establish ground rules. Here's a good ground rule. If I have a problem with you, my first thing I do is hey, listen, what do you think? We have a disagreement here, and we try to work it out. And we keep trying to work it out, and then if it's not working out, maybe we need to go to a teacher or a mentor or a parent. Say, listen, we're having a problem. We have two ways of doing this, and we can't come to agreement on this. Put those ground rules in your resource plan. And here's some good tools that you can use for help planning resources on your project. Create an organization chart. Now, how many grades are on these teams? Are they all different grades or just one grade?
6, 7, 8.
6th, 7th, and 8th. Maybe the 8th graders have been around for a while, should be in a senior role, a leadership role. Leadership is a really important part of project management. It's not just about the dollars and the cents and the schedule. In fact, project management got a bad rap for that because project managers will walk around going, you're late and you're over budget. It's not really what it's all about. It's about leadership. Project manager is a leader, making sure everybody's okay, trying to resolve those conflicts that we mentioned. So you have an organization chart, and maybe you have somebody really good with SimCity, and maybe you want to put them in charge of the SimCity part, and then have some people underneath that look up to that person as a leader and can learn from that person. Another good thing is responsibility assignment matrix. So you have people fighting over the same work. So you do this. So Joe and Bob were working on the essay, and Joe is more knowledgeable on the essay for one reason or another. So maybe make Joe primary and Bob secondary. And then you go down the plan and do the same thing, and for all the people on your team. So these aren't very complicated. Again, keep it simple, but this is how you plan resources for your project. Now we're getting into communications, and these are big teams. Communicating is going to be really, really hard. And here's a lot of different types of communication. The big things that you're concerned about with is how's everybody getting the right information? How does everybody know what we're doing on this project? Poor communication can cause misunderstandings, wasted time and effort, low project and team morale. Project manager spends 90% of their time communicating, and that's true. During planning, they spend a lot of time working during planning, but during execution, they're actually trying to keep everybody on the same page. So that's something to think about. If you're a good communicator, you might consider it for your project management. Here's some tools on communications that you might want to think about, some skills. Active listening is very good. You ever do whisper down the lane and hear what comes out the other side? It's interesting. And that's because one person's speaking and the other person's listening. Active listening is the person listening repeats back what that first person said. And then that first person says, yeah, that's exactly what I meant, or no, this is a little bit of a correction. Questioning and probing is very good. Project managers need to do that to find out how the project's doing and make sure the work's getting done okay. And then all these things here, increase knowledge, improve performance, coaching, persuading, motivating, resolving conflict, those are leadership skills. That points you to the fact that the project manager is really a leader. It's not just dollars and cents and schedule. It's trying to lead and make sure everybody knows what we're doing here. So use these skills to achieve the results that you want. And then here's a different, nice, easy output everybody can understand. Let's not get too complicated on it. But these are some of the things that we're going to do to improve communications on our project. And I like the one here about the team is going to meet daily and just have a meeting together, just speak. And they're going to go over what everybody's working on, what they've accomplished, what the problems are. It's not a status report. This is what I'm going to work on today, and here's some of the problems I'm having. And the idea is people hear some of the problems, and now you can start resolving those. So plan to communicate who, when, how, and why. And then some other stuff about the plan. So we've gone through all those pieces of the puzzle. There's 8 pieces, we broke them up, and those are a lot of things to think about. We figured out a couple of those pieces aren't that big, but some are very, very important, like quality and resources and scope. Write down your plan. Those tables, that's writing down your plan. You have those 4 components. We only have one more to do for your project plan for the submittal. Compare your plan to the project objectives and address stakeholder differences. Don't forget those objectives we covered in the beginning. This is what you're trying to do on the project. You want to win the competition, so you want to deliver all those 5 deliverables. It all has to be consistent. When you're done your plan, it should be consistent with your objectives. Maybe you're a new team and you're only going to try to do 3 of the deliverables, trying to be realistic, but you want to get good scores on those 3 deliverables. That's realistic objectives, if you ask me. Your plan should be consistent with that. Get agreement from the stakeholders. We covered those. You have your sponsor, which is probably your teacher. You have your mentors, your project manager. Is anybody thinking your project team should have a project manager yet? Would anybody like to be a project manager? It's pretty interesting. It's a good career. I like it because started out as an electrical engineer. I got into a lot of software. And then what I realized was I like, first of all, the whole project. I like delivering things. So I did a lot of systems engineering. But I like working with different technology. When you're a project manager, you get to work on all different types of projects. So that might be a reason why you might like project management. Measure your project progress against your plan, and know that your plan is going to change, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. And then also know those pieces of the puzzle have to come back together again. That's the project manager's main job. You're going to have a lot of stakeholders that are going to want an awful lot. The project manager is going to say, well, you want an awful lot, and it's going to take 2 years, and it's going to cost $2 million. And then and the sponsor is going to go, no, I want it in 1 year, $1 million. And the project manager has to say, well, here's the things that we're going to take out on scope. And that's how that works. So an integrated plan shows how to reach your goal. Integration is a big word, but it's one that you want to learn, add it to your vocabulary, and it's just bringing everything back together again. That was our plan, and that's where we spent most of our time. That's where the project manager spends most of their time. And now you might be thinking, that's a lot of work. I don't have time for that. You're just getting started right now, so you might have some time right now. But what you want to think about is next year, you can start your plan before your competition. And if you do a good plan this year, you don't start from scratch next year. You pick up the plan from this year and you make changes to it, and then you use that plan next year. So planning becomes easier every year. And it helps you to reach your objectives, and maybe you can make your objectives bigger. So now we're in the execute phase. And this lines up with a figure that's in that handbook. I think they call it initiate. That's not that important. Initiate something else. Plan is plan, execute is do, and close is reflect. So when you're done your project, you want to see how it turned out. So now that you have your plan, you want to follow it. Now everybody can start their work. What does a project manager do during execution in the real world? It's not the work, because it's project management's a full-time job. They spend a lot of time on that project plan. Now during execution, they're making sure everything follows that plan. The things they do for that is organize and train the project team, assign work to the project team, direct and manage their activity, communicate with stakeholders. What were their expectations for the project? Are their expectations being met? And expectations are a little bit different than requirements. You have to manage those expectations. They wanted a gold-plated moving arm, and they're just going to get a moving arm because you have a $100 limit. So you have to manage those expectations. The project manager is measuring progress against the plan and measuring quality against the plan. So how's that moving arm and how's that city? Does it look like it's made out of recycled materials? Or does it look like roads? And what is everybody else doing? Well, the project team, they're doing all the work. So this is where everything is getting done. But now with your project plan, with project management, hopefully they're working on the same page and everybody's getting things done. And there's not a lot of rework. There's not a lot of things being done over again. There's not a lot of frustration because everybody knows what they have to do. The sponsor funds the project and promotes the project. That sounds like the teacher stuff, right? Teacher, or maybe a parent that's really all for future cities. Stakeholders, you want to make sure you meet with them. And I would be interested in knowing how your project's going. So stay informed and engaged. People are the key to success. Executing your scope really defines your product. You have those 5 deliverables, that's your product. A project management could be also about a service or any other result. A project is anything that has it's a temporary endeavor. It has a start date and an end date. That's definitely future cities competitions. The scope defines everything that's going to get done. Time and cost and quality are saying how much, when, and what's it going to look like. So notice how we didn't spend a lot of time on execute. And monitor and control is where you're going to generate some reports. That's the check-in part. That goes into your project plan. Monitor and control, what you're going to do is you're going to look at your plan, you're going to look at your actual data. It took 10 hours to do that moving arm, and we only budgeted 8 hours, so maybe we're a little late. What's the impact on our project? So update the check-in section of the project plan. And then talking about change, it's going to happen. The main way you figure it out is you look at your plan and things are going longer than you thought. There's a problem going on that's probably change happening. Sometimes you have to look for it real deep. You uncover the cause of the change. One thing you want to try sometimes is 5 whys. It's really interesting. Why are you late? Because I couldn't get my software done. Why couldn't you get your software done? Because I couldn't get the installation finished. And you can keep going down. Why couldn't you get the installation? 5 whys. If you keep doing that, you usually get to the root cause. It's interesting. Decide what you're going to do, make an adjustment to your plan, and execute your plan, your new plan. It's called a new baseline. Just know that change is going to happen for your project. And then decision making, you want to define this. How you're going to make decisions. Is it going to be by consensus? Is everybody going to vote on it? Maybe there's some situations where it has to be dictated, but there's a process for that. Recommend action, get agreement, accept or reject the change. And then make another adjustment to your plan. And then close. Okay, when's close occur? Close is after the competition. But what do you have to do? You came back, you won the competition, you're all happy. There's a couple of things that you need to do. What are they? Anybody want to, after your competition, what are some things that you might have to get done? You got to clean up the mess you made. That's the big one, right? How about getting your thoughts together for next year? Start thinking, hey, we did a plan this year and it helped. Let's start a plan earlier next year before they even announce the competition. We know who all our people are. We can do a lot of things. For you to say something? So there's some closeout things to do. Confirm the project is finished. Make sure all the scope's complete. Meet with your mentors. Update lessons learned. Your mentors can give you feedback. Hey, if you guys did this, maybe it would have been a little bit different. Make sure all your stakeholders are happy. And here's a good one, and this should be in your plan right now. Make sure you plan to celebrate and thank everybody for the work. You used a lot of volunteers. Maybe you want to give them a plaque. Maybe you want to have a pizza party. Get everybody together. Do your cleanup stuff. This is closing out. So lessons learned. Start lessons learned right now. Here's some new things we're going to try this year, and we don't know how it's going to turn out. And write down how it turned out, and then what you did if it didn't turn out correctly. So start right now, but make sure you really get them after you're done the closeout. Write it down so you can remember it for the next project. These are some of the mistakes we made. These are some of the things that we learned that were really, really good. Here's a quote from the handbook I think is great. So we created an awesome city because we took the time to think about our goals and came up with a clear plan. This is from a student participant. So planning can help. Who we are, Project Management Institute. It's a worldwide organization, over 700,000 certified project management professionals. They have a standard that almost every company in the world is following. It's the standard for project management. They create educational programs. So this is the output of the educational programs. And then I'm with the Delaware Valley chapter. We're in the Philadelphia area. We go out, we do a lot of outreach. We do this presentation in a different form with Habitat for Humanity, Philadelphia School District. So the Delaware Valley chapter is very, very active. This is where you can get the larger presentation, PMIEF.org, and that is about 60 to 70. It's got a lot more detail for each one of those planning stages. And then you should be able to get a copy of this. I think there'll be an announcement going out. And these are the people that created the presentation. I really appreciate your participation. There's a lot of great ideas. Anything like this, anytime you're involved in something like this, it's better if there's back and forth. It gets boring if you're just reading the PowerPoint presentation. And hopefully you found it exciting. Is anybody thinking about a career in project management? Did anybody ever think about it before? Did this help you with like what a project manager does? A couple people? If you have any questions, let me know. I'll hang around for a little bit. Thank you very much for your time.